Hey everybody. Today I want to talk about the heart, and in specific a verse that speaks around our heart and speaks around when the Bible talks about our heart and the Bible talks about the desires of our heart. What is the Bible saying is our heart? Is it just talking merely about the organ, our heart, of our body, the heart? It would have been dangerous if I shot the right side. Praise Jesus for biology at school. Um, or is it talking about something way deeper? And I recall when I was taught what the heart refers to, it changed a lot of thinking for me, because the heart in the Bible does not just refer to the human organ, but it also refers to the most inner part of us, our being, our thinking, um, our reactions, our key focus, our priorities. There's so many words that we can align with the word heart when you read Bible verses, but also if you look at idioms or if you look at sayings, and the heart is referred to, it's not referring to the actual organ, but if you look at the importance even of that organ, we can understand why, in whichever context the heart is spoken about. It's the core being of any person. So without me going on and on about the heart, we are even mentioning and talking about the heart. I would like to read for Psalm 37, and that's verse 4. And it says, "Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart." Let's look if we maybe get another version. It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will grant you the desires of your heart. So clearly, desires, or if I say my desires are nested in my heart, right? It doesn't refer to the vital organ, kuduf doof, but it refers to my inner being. My personal yearnings, and me as the everything. So let's read it again. "Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart." So the first part of the verse says, "Delight yourself also in the Lord," right? So delight yourself in the Lord, full stop, right? So we must take delight in the Lord. What does it mean to take delight? I find pleasure in it. It's important to me. I enjoy it. So it's basically saying that I need to make it very important in my life to have the Father's heart in mind, right? The second part talks about he will give me the desires of my heart. So if I read that, to me it talks about priorities. It talks about when I put God first, I'm never second. You've probably heard that before. Is when I put God first, God makes sure that everything works out for my good. So a short while ago, I had this conversation with somebody around the scripture, and the person's viewpoint was, if I delight myself, if I find pleasure in the things of God, it gives me the desires of my heart. So I can ask God for anything. And for me, it was like, okay, that's what scripture says. But now I ask the other question is, if my desires is not God's plan for my life, if my desires are things that's not good for me, we've all been there. If my desires is to have things that isn't necessarily good for me, whether I know of it or don't know of it, will God grant that desire? And the person's viewpoint was yes, because he has to be committed to what he said in his word, right? So God cannot violate his word. There's another scripture that says that God cannot turn around from a promise he's made, and on and on and on and on. And I listened and I was like, oh, okay. And then I went to go ponder on this a little bit for myself, because you probably know it. It's nice when somebody does a hard work for you, where they study a scripture or they work out a fancy recipe, and you can literally just download, print, and bake. But when you do it for yourself, especially when it is God speaking. So when it is God speaking directly to me, I don't know about you, but for me, it makes a big difference, because God speaks to me personally in a situation that maybe only Him and me know about, because we all have conversations with God, which we won't necessarily have with other people, right? So I'm talking about a situation like that. And I was like, okay, Lord, so you grant me the desires of my heart. So what if my desires are not your desires for my life? What if those desires contradict Jeremiah 29:11? And I can see now those desires are good, but you know the end from the beginning, so you know in the future it's not gonna go, it's not gonna work out for you. Should God honor that? And I would, my opinion, would like to pass my opinion and say God cannot, He can, because God can do anything, but God cannot give me things that that contradicts His will. He cannot give me things that doesn't put me in a position where I will be safe or okay, it's good for me, right? The other side of it is that I can make a decision to either believe that God has given it to me, and so I'm going to quote the scripture, and then it doesn't pan out, and guess who gets the blame? Ne? We've all been there. Or God can put before me that I need to choose. And that's why when I read the scripture from, you have to read the first part of the verse. And not the latter, because I've heard people quote, God gives us the desires of our heart. But that's half of a scripture. The first part of the scripture is that we need to delight ourselves in the Lord. So what am I saying in a nutshell? For me, perhaps for you, go ponder on it. I'd like to get your comments on this. For me, the first part says, I need to delight in Him. I find out what He says. My desires, I go check against what He says, and I decide, do I still want that or don't I want that, based on, is it a delight to Him? Is it His plan for me? And I think it then works out the latter part of this verse, because then my desires becomes God's desires for me. Then the decisions and the things and the plans that I want to do, it becomes what God's plans is for me. Again, Jeremiah 29:11. So if you perhaps find yourself in a situation where you have to make a very difficult decision, and you're reading the scripture, delight yourself also in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. Go to God and say, God, what is your desire for my life? How do I delight in you here? What do you have here for me? And in that, the Lord will tell you, either by a scripture or by somebody talking to you, or you're just having that knowing, because that knowing comes from that heart that we spoke of at the beginning. We will know, because we have a moral compass, we will know this is God for me and this isn't God for me. But that takes me sitting out time, spending time with God, asking God, how does this look for me? Because face it, we only know the human side of how something can work out, but the spiritual side of it, only God knows. So let's make a quality decision. We will delight in the Lord, in His desires, His heart's desires, and then align that up with our heart's desires and make that our heart's desires. And in that, let's make this confession. As I delight myself in the Lord, He gives me the desires of my heart. Right? The confession again. As I delight myself in the Lord, He gives me the desires of my heart. I trust it blessed you. Yeah, excited? Comment. Let me know what you think about that one. And yeah, have a blessed day further. Love you guys. Bye.